Hello and welcome to the Patent Literacy Symposium and this session, Oral Language Links to Comprehension for Classroom Teachers. My name is Sherry Hartman and I'm joined by my colleague Kim Jenkins. We are excited to facilitate this session for everyone. Before we get started, we just have a few housekeeping items to review. Kim has put the link to the presenters' handouts for this session. Her bio and the conference schedule are all on the patent website, and the link is in the chat. And just as a reminder, the session is recorded and it is 75 minutes in length. It includes about an hour presentation and then 15 minutes question and answer period. If you need closed captioning, all you need to do is click on the icon CC live transcript on the Zoom control panel. If you are having any technical difficulties, please go, please go to the, please go to the technical support guides area above the schedule on the symposium page. Please keep your Zoom feature off and stay muted to eliminate any potential distractions during the presentation portion of our session. And because this is a webinar, microphones have been muted and your video feature has been turned off. And we would love for you, though, to tweet out or share on social media all that you are learning from the Literacy Symposium. The hashtag for the symposium is hashtag PatentLit2022. And now I would like to introduce Judy Dodson.
Hi there. I'm so happy to be here with you all today and to be talking about one of my areas of real interest, which is oral language and what's the role that oral language plays in reading. I know that all of you are involved in reading in one way or another, probably in a very big way. So what is the link that oral language plays to comprehension? And that's what we're going to be talking about today. The focus for study, let me just say too, if you downloaded the PowerPoint slides, or if you intend to after this, the PowerPoint slides have some extra slides that I'm not going to be able to cover in our training. So you may see me hide or skip a slide. But I put them in there because I want you to have the information that's on the slide. So even though we may not be able to cover it in any depth, I want you to have the information on it. So don't feel upset if we don't cover every single slide. We'll do as best we can. I want to be sure to get to the activities that we have. I don't know, some of you may know that I've written a book called 50 Nifty Activities for Reading and 50 Nifty Activities for Speaking and Listening. And a lot of what we're going to be covering today are things that are in my Speaking and Listening book. So I just wanted to mention that in case you have it in your school library. You can look them up and you'll have more information about the activities that we're doing, and some are not in there. But the focus for today is to review research on language development to discover how early word exposure matters to later literacy learning, to learn why instructional strategies that emphasize learning words in context and in relationship to each other are based on the science of talk, and to learn how to bring simple, engaging, and effective activities into your classroom. None of these strategies or activities that I'm going to talk about are 45 minutes long. They're very brief, and they're meant to be interwoven into whatever you're doing in your classroom. So let's just get started. Children come to us with too little language to support comprehension very often. And so I ask you, if not us, who is going to do it? If not now, when is it going to happen? And if not here, where is it going to happen? At school. So I always think that sometimes teachers will complain that, the parents haven't done a good enough job at home. And yes, it's true. If you've gone to a restaurant or a Starbucks lately, and everybody in the family is on a device, and they're not speaking. And yes, that's very true. but I have to look at it as it is our honor, our privilege to be able to fill in what the parents are not doing. And that's what we're going to do at school. So that's what this is about. There is a reflection guide that you have access to. So every once in a while, there's a slide that says reflection guide. And if we were in person, I would ask you to, turn to your neighbor and say, do you think that all children come to school with enough oral language to support literacy and academic learning? And I'm just gonna, I'm gonna answer my answer, which is no, they don't. So we have to really focus on it. And I just feel like it has not been a focus of instruction, even for literacy. So if it could be a missing link that if we focus on, we'll get better results. And I'm sure that you know the simple view of reading, Duff and Tunmer. And I want to remind you that the simple view of reading is a formula that is based on word recognition times language comprehension, which gives us reading comprehension or proficient reading. But that language comprehension is not written language comprehension, it is oral language comprehension. So that's where we're going to live today. We're going to assume or hope for the best that the children will get good foundational word recognition skills. But what can we do to enhance oral language skills? And that's what we're going to look at. And, one of the things that I like to do with teachers is to ask them to think about their children who are struggling in reading now and see, do they have problems just in word recognition? Are there problems in language comprehension only? Or are they having weaknesses in both areas? And because this is a multiplication formula, if a child has a weakness in both areas, and I'm going to just say, randomly 0.5 and 0.5. So they are not strong in either language or word recognition. When you multiply 0.5 times 0.5, you come out with 0.25. In other words, you come out with a child who has a 25% probability or likelihood of becoming a proficient reader and having good reading comprehension. It's a child who's really clobbered. We know how to impact and enhance word recognition. Oral language comprehension is a lot harder. It's a lot more complex. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. And I would like you to give a moment's thought to how many of your children have weaknesses in both of those areas. And Sherry, if you could enable the chat so that people could just put in the chat box, if you have children who have weaknesses in both areas, you can write yes or both, whatever you prefer.
Okay, I did enable that, so they
Okay, so and I noticed that Sherry wrote that my book is available on Amazon, but don't try to buy it on Amazon because it often costs like $100 or $200. I have no idea why, but it is available on Tools for Reading at a reasonable price. So I just wanted to let you know that I have no idea why on Amazon things are so expensive. But would you please write both if you have children who have weaknesses in both word recognition and language comprehension? Because if you do, then we have got to address that. And it looks like maybe people aren't writing or they can't. So I'm going to just leave that alone and leave it be. One of the things that I want to mention to you is that most of our intervention work is in the area of phonics or phonemic awareness. But if you have a child who has weaknesses in both areas, then you have to think about what are we doing for intervention in that area? Because very often what we do in tier 1 instruction is not accessed by the kids. So we'll see. And I see now all of those are coming in. So thank you, Sherry, whatever you did, it's working. And so most everyone is saying that it's in both areas. So, I always say this to myself, these kids are really clobbered, and they are. So we have to think as we're planning, as we're doing data work, as we're looking at Scarborough's reading rope, as we're looking at the simple view of reading, what are we doing in each area? And, this is a quote that we use in letters, that word knowledge is the best predictor of reading comprehension. First grade vocabulary predicts 11th grade reading comprehension. So that's kind of stunning. That's Keith Stanovich and Ann Cunningham. And then I just want to remind you as we head into this session about the 30 million word deficit and the Heart and Rhythm study. And this study, whoops, I think we need to mute you. I think I could do that, can't I? Can you do that? Okay, good. But if you remember correctly, and we don't have time to go into detail in this study, but if you remember correctly, it was published in 95, and what they did was they did recordings of language in the homes of people who in low socioeconomic status homes that had more middle socioeconomic status, and professional homes. And what they found that was by age 3, vocabulary really differed. And actually the children in the professional homes were using more rare words in their vocabulary, or unique words, not rare, but unique in their vocabularies than the mothers in the lowest socioeconomic status homes. So this is, so they started us thinking on policy being made for preschool and things like that around the idea that word usage is important, because what they found was that vocabulary at age 3 was strongly related to reading comprehension scores in 3rd grade. So the amount of talking in the home made a difference. We also discovered further implications were that turn taking also is important, and that it's not just the number of words, not the sheer number of words, but were there affirmations given in the home? And in addition, what was the quality of the words? So when we think about what we know about academic vocabulary, that comes out of that. However, I can't teach about this study anymore without also addressing some of the weaknesses that have come into question. So, all the families in the lowest socioeconomic status group were African-American. There were only 42 families in the study, so it was quite a small study. A graduate student was present in the home because it was before we could do things, with our computers the way we can now. So that could make people feel uncomfortable about talking. The study discussed business talk and chit chat, but didn't really take into account the fact that the African-American language itself is a more direct language, than English might be. So when you're speaking using that language, then you might be just using fewer words. And we want to be careful not to pathologize linguistic differences. These are just linguistic differences. However, so this is what I need to be sure to tell you, but this is still not, it doesn't mean that the implications are not real, and that the not just the number of words, but the quality of words is important, that conversational turn taking is important. And so an example of this is playing a game of memory might have more conversational turns in it than a parent who reads a book without dialogic reading. So they're just reading through the book, but they're not stopping and asking questions and discussing things with the child. So in my work in West Virginia, I've worked in West Virginia for 10 years now, and we do an oral language night for kindergarten parents and talk about this kind of stuff. And we always we sponsored it with title money, and that title teachers would give away, books to families that came to oral language night. And the last time we did it, which was before COVID, we not only gave away a book, but we gave away games. And the reason we gave away games was because of the conversational turn taking that takes place when playing a game in a family. Let me just take a sip of water. So let's continue. So again, I want you to be aware that the implications have held up. And there are, Daniel Willingham in his blog, which you can look online, Daniel Willingham's blog, and has an article, it has a blog about different replications of the study that have been done. So here's something interesting. We learn words from birth to 9 years old. We learn more words by listening. However, from 9 years old for the rest of our lives, we learn more words from reading. So if you don't read, you don't learn new words. And that's important for us to think about when we think about the Matthew effect. And remember that the Matthew effect is the idea that the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And that work done by Keith Stanovich is describing a cycle that takes place when children read a lot of words. So if we do those foundational skills really well and children read a lot of words, well, they read words, they learn new words. They learn new words, they understand what they're reading. They understand what they're reading. Reading is cool. So they keep reading and the rich get richer. However, if you don't read a lot of words, and you don't learn a lot of words, then you don't understand a lot of words. And if you don't understand a lot of words, then reading isn't much fun and you don't read many words and the poor get poorer. So that's what the Matthew effect is about. And that's why that is the connection of the idea of those foundational skills facilitating comprehension skills. And in this case, vocabulary. And this is just a graphic that shows the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. So who needs more practice? Well, one of the things that Keith Stanovich noted in his research was that children in the 90th percentile would independently read more words in 2 days than children in the 10th percentile read in 1 year. So you know those children who you make the expectation that they're going to read for 15 minutes a night, every day, every night, but they don't really do it. And yet there's that really good reader who, man, if you would let them have sustained silent reading all day long in class, then they would be happy. So again, this is just asking you to use your reflection guide and say, what do you notice in your own students? How much do your struggling readers actually read independently compared to your successful readers? So that's something I'd like you to reflect on. So what does oral language really involve? What does it mean when we talk about oral language? What we're talking about is what are the vocabulary words used by the student. We're also talking about what content or information is the student including in their statements. So vocabulary and content. Then we're also looking at form. What's the syntax used by the speaker? And then speech language therapists call it the mean length of utterance. How many words were used in the expressive language? So you could literally count up the number of words that are used, and that will give you a measure of the length of their utterance. That makes a difference. So if a child is just using 2 words, that's different than a child is using 22 words. So this is just a Judy Dodson thing, but I tried to figure out what might a teacher do? What might I do? What did I do actually in an informal assessment? What could it look like? Because most speech language assessments are done by speech language pathologists. So here's my thought. You can create a data array for your class to determine who needs the most support by doing the following. Use a simple oral prompt, ask a question, record the child's response, and analyze the prompt in terms of, so you ask them a simple question, they give you a simple answer, you say, oh, let me write that down, you write it down, or you could literally record it if you want. And then you analyze it in terms of what? In terms of how long was it? How was the grammar, the syntax in it? What words did they use, the vocabulary words? And what kind of information was in it? What was the content in it? And then if you repeat this several times, you could do it at benchmarking, you could do it as a progress monitoring tool, it's pretty darn easy. You could really establish patterns of growth and change. You could emphasize conversational turn taking, we'll talk about that later, and then see if their conversation is more automatic, more automatic. So I want to talk to you about activities now. We'll go in and out of activities as we go through this, our morning together, or our afternoon for you. I'm in Colorado, so it's still morning for me. But this first activity is called Waves of Words. And the idea is, I always use for myself the expression, wash your children in words, just washing them in words. And some of our children come to us washed in many, many words, and some of them don't. This is adapted from the work of Stephen Stahl. I attended the late Stephen Stahl. I attended a session that he gave on vocabulary, and I've adapted what he talked about. I'm going to skip this. So here's Waves of Words. It takes one teacher, one class, and good books. We have about 200 days in the school year. If you were to read 3 books a day, every day, you would wash your children in words and create a 600 book kid at the end of the kindergarten year. Now, why is that important? Because some kids come to us as 1,000 book kids, and some kids come to us as 0 book kids. Maybe they have the Dolly Parton Imagination Library. Maybe there's a Reach Out and Read doctor in their neighborhood, in their clinic. But some of our children, as a matter of fact, a lot of our children aren't read to as much as many others of our children. So the playing field is very uneven. So if you could read 3 books a day, every day for about 200 days, you'd create a 600 book kid. Now, this does not mean that the kindergarten teacher goes to the library and checks out 600 books. But what it means is, just like a mother at home, a parent at home, a caregiver, your kids have their favorite 25 books that they want to hear over and over and over and over. And as long as they want to hear them, they're getting something from it. So what's going to happen in your classroom is that they're going to have their favorite books too. And because they've heard it before, it doesn't take more than 10 minutes to read a typical picture book, because you don't have to keep doing text talk and background knowledge and things like that. But our goal is to literally wash the children in language, in wonderful literary language. And then if you were to do it again in 1st grade, by the middle of 1st grade, you would have created a 1,000 book kid. This activity supports students' understanding and engagement in oral language. And that's what this activity is about. It's how do we bring up the children who have not had much language exposure. Now, I know that I feel that since reading first, really, and then again, emphasized even more during when the standards came out, there's been a de-emphasizing of read aloud. But what I want you to do is think of read aloud as oral comprehension. I want you to think of the simple view of reading, and you're doing a good job on those word recognition skills. Now let's do a good job on oral language skills. And that's, I believe very strongly that you're doing comprehension when you're reading aloud. This next activity that I wanted to share with you is called the Fair Trade Book Fair. And these are also in my book. So if you have them, this is not a sales pitch, but if you have them, you can go into them and read more about these. But Fair Trade Book Fair is not a scholastic book fair, but it is one where you get all the books donated to the school. So it could be from churches and Kiwanis and Rotary clubs and from students, if you have students in the school who can do that. And so you also collect adult books too. And then everyone comes in and shops for books for free. Everybody gets a grocery bag, and you can there's no limit. You just fill up your grocery bag. And this book exchange, everybody goes home with books. And again, it supports children reading in the home. It encourages parents to demonstrate that they too are interested in books and read and have an interest in books themselves. But again, this is an activity that can even the playing field for our students. This next activity is called Random Words of Kindness. And Random Words of Kindness is about the fact that some children come to school having received fewer affirmations. So the affirmation playing field is uneven as well. The Hart and Risley study showed that children in the professional group and in the middle class group, the working class group, and in the lower SES group had way different numbers of affirmations, with the chit chat or that extra stuff being where the affirmations come in. So it's Random Words of Kindness is not about generating false praise or inauthentic praise, but it is about letting each student know how special they are and contribute and what they contribute to the classroom community. And these are some images that teachers have captured doing things with this Random Words of Kindness, but having a complement tree where each leaf of the tree is an act of kindness and is a random, and words, not so much, I mean, they can be acts, but it can also be, I say to Kim, thanks for helping me with my homework, or thank you for playing. It was fun to play with you on recess. That is a random word of kindness. And you can have a basket that has sticky notes and has, I think you can go to the dollar store and get really, cute little stationery, put it in there, because even though a child could use a black and white piece of note paper, it's more fun to write on a cute piece of note paper. Don't you think that? I do. When I'm writing notes, I love to have like cute little notepads. And then on the left side, you'll see a kindness chart. So it can be for acts of kindness, but it also can be, in this case, we're talking about words of kindness, and a teacher says, that Jose, I heard you being so kind to Christina when you told her that you liked her story, things like that. And the next one, activity that I want to share with you is family backpack notes. And family backpack notes, I used to call this lunchbox notes, but realized that so many of our children come to us and eat lunch at school. In some districts, everybody eats lunch at school now. So the idea is to put that in a child's backpack. Just put a positive statement. So things like parents, caregivers, grandparents, letting them know the importance of positive and encouraging messages for their students. Caregivers can surprise children with loving notes placed in backpacks or lunch boxes. If you can, send home note paper that caregivers can use. So if you have note paper, you can create it too, like the child can even make a picture and you can copy it and send it home as note paper. But things so simple, thank you for being so kind. Thank you for being so helpful. I love you. Have a good day. You're a great kid. When you get home, let's talk about your day. But these things are important. If you have a kindergartner who can't read yet, you can put a sticker on it. You can put a heart on it. And I want to talk to you about this because I actually did a kind of a combination of Random Words of Kindness and family backpack notes when I was in West Virginia the year before COVID. And what we did, it was Grandparents' Day in kindergarten. So and a lot of these children are being raised by grandparents. So we brought the grandparents into the cafeteria, and I talked to them about what I'm talking to you about, the importance of affirmations and of, talking to your children and how that contributes to reading. I mean, I talked to them, and anyway, we put out on their desks, on the tables in the cafeteria, we put out index cards and pencils. I'm telling you all these details, so maybe you can copy this idea next year. And so we put out index cards and pencils. And then we asked, and I had no idea how this would be received, but we asked the grandparents to write something positive that they want to share with their grandchild before they went into their grandchild's kindergarten class. And so that when they went into the grandparents to the kindergarten classroom, they could say that to their grandchild. And we even had people there who could scribe for grandparents, because we didn't know if they could all write, actually. This is in Appalachia in West Virginia, and we just didn't know what our situation was. And they, to a person, they wrote. And they took it so seriously. It was, you could hear a pin drop in the room while they're all writing these notes to their grandchildren. And then I thought, well, this went really well. I'm going to take a chance. And I asked, would anybody want to share what they've written? And the hands just shoot up in the air. And one of the instructional coach who was with me that day went around with a microphone and had them tell what they wanted, what they were going to say to their grandchildren. And they were beautiful notes. They weren't just the little cute ones that I put down here. They had beautiful things to say. And so I think that we have to remember the impact of teaching, not telling, and really giving our parents the credit, our grandparents, the credit they need, that if we teach them and we do it with sensitivity and dignity, that they will understand what we're talking about, and they will want to do it. So let's go on. The next activity is Super 7 sentences. And I have to admit to you guys that our power was off this morning. So I have see that little hat that kid is wearing with a Superman sign on it. And I have a Superman teddy bear that I was going to bring, but I had to race out of the house to find a place to do these presentations this morning. So I left some things that I wanted at home. But Super 7 sentences are super simple. And it's just that you ask children to create sentences that have 7 words in them. And I started really understanding the power of a simple lesson like this, a simple activity like this, when I was observing teachers. And I observed a 3rd grade teacher asking the class, "What continent is this?" And she pointed to a map. And the child said, "Africa." And the teacher said, "Great," and went on to the next thing that she was going to say. And another teacher at the same school that I was at had a child doing share and tell, and the child held up their backpack and said, "Walmart." And the teacher didn't question the child. And what I would have wanted the teacher to do is to say, "Wow, that's a nice backpack. Where did you get that backpack? And when did you get that backpack?" So the child could say, "Well, I went with my mom to Walmart and she bought me this backpack." And then you have, "I went with my mom to Walmart and she bought me this backpack." You've got a 13-word sentence, The next thing I would like, but the teachers weren't noticing. They were so used to children making 1 or 2 or 3-word sentences that they just weren't even noticing these short, truncated sentences. And when I teach high school teachers, they also say that the kids are making short, truncated sentences. So the whole idea here is that you ask the children to create a Super 7 sentence. And if they do create a Super 7 sentence, they get to wear the Superman hat or hold the little stuffed animal, depending on, your kids and what they might like. And I have a Super 7 sign up in the classrooms that looks like a Superman sign, except it has a number 7 in it. And then the next step I'd like you to think about, if you do Super 7 sentences or any sentence work that you do, is ask the other children in the classroom to repeat it so that everybody repeats this good sentence. Sentence repetition is an important developer of sentences, because sometimes our children are spoken to at home in brief, truncated sentences like do your homework, eat your food, brush your teeth, go inside, turn off the TV. And they get lost in the weeds of long sentences when we're reading children's literature to them. So if you were the most conscientious teacher in the world, and you had a clipboard, and on the clipboard you had every child in your class, and you were going to check off 3 times a day that you expected every child in your class to make a complete sentence. You wanted to make sure they did that. That would take a lot of time and energy on your part. You'd have to be really conscientious. But if you do sentence repetition, so if somebody says, my favorite flavor of ice cream is vanilla, let's do Rocky Road. It's Rocky Road. Let's do something more interesting than vanilla. And then you have the whole class say, that's a great sentence. That's a Super 7 sentence. Here's the hat, put it on. Here's the puppy. Here's the whatever. And then let's all repeat that sentence. So everybody in the class says that. If you did that, just interspersed 10 times within the course of a day, everybody in your class would be experiencing what a sentence, what a complete sentence sounds like, feels like in their bodies, in their bones. And you can't expect children to write complete sentences if they can't speak complete sentences. So again, it's such a simple, so simple it's stupid, right? It's so simple, it's like, really? Try it. It's very effective. And kids like to repeat other kids' statements, and it makes you feel like $1 million if you hear other people doing it. So this slide just has a picture of what you could, create for a Super 7 sentence, and it's just giving the rationale that I've already talked about. This next sentence comes from somebody who is such a friend of Patton's, my dear, dear friend, Nancy Hennessy. And some of you may know Nancy and have had the privilege of working with Nancy. But many, many years ago, Nancy taught me about $10 words. And $10 words are when you use fancy words or different words or more elaborate words for things that happen every day in your classroom. And so you're stretching and expanding children's vocabulary. You don't wait for the intermediate grades to bring in academic vocabulary. So if you're something you say 10 times a day, line up at the door, right? Instead of saying line up at the door, you can say, please form a queue at the front portal. And your children will feel like the smartest children in Pennsylvania or whatever state you're in right now. Please move in a linear fashion to the door. What else do you say every day? So what I would like you to think about is, what are some things that you say every day that you might say in a different way? So if we can enable the chat box, or if it is enabled, I'd love for a few people to write, what's something that you say every day? It's time for lunch. Who's absent today? Line up at the door. You can use mine. Get out your book. And let's see if anybody has a way of saying it in a kind of a fancier way. We'll look and see. Okay, so come to the carpet, turn to your partner. What do you do? Keep your hand. Wait, there's one. We are so talkative, loquacious. I love that. Yes, that's exactly right. We're so loquacious. Good. Do you have your writing utensil? Perfect. Disperse from the meeting area. Good. make sure your writing equipment is precise and to the point. Your writing equipment, yeah. Leave the door slightly ajar. So just simple things like that, but they're, and you'll have your little repertoire of them because it's hard to kind of come up with them on the fly, but figure it out and you will expand vocabulary by just doing the same thing you do every single day. And here's one that I love. And this was outside of $10 words. This was a colleague of mine in Denver who did this with her kindergarten class. She renamed her classroom helpers. And I really want to encourage you, take a picture of the slide if you haven't, written it down, but it is so great. So the messenger became the courier. The pet care person, the person who fed the guinea pig became the zoologist. The plant care, the person who watered the plants was the botanist. The weather reporter, the meteorologist. The welcome team were the salutation team or the greeters, the appreciation team. Cleanup was the classroom organization team, and the line leader was the procession organizer or the procession coordinator. So this teacher also had her children, these were kindergarten kids, but they memorized them. She would have them reading affirmations every day. So she had an affirmation reader in her class. And it was just a beautiful thing. When, they would do morning meeting and, the weather girl would report, the meteorologist would report, the botanist, how will the botanist please report on the plants? I watered the plants today and they look good, will the zoologist please report, etc. And then when they got done reporting, she would ask the children, please acknowledge the meteorologist, and everybody would clap. Now it'd be easy to say, please clap for the meteorologist, but instead she would use the word acknowledge. And her children learned it. She was in a super high impact school. And she said it probably took a month for the children to learn all of these fancy words, but they learned them. So this next activity is the 30-second conversation. And I did this, excuse me, I did this activity for my social emotional learning class this morning. And I wish we were in person so we could actually do it in person, but we're not, and we can. But I want to talk to you about it. One of the things that Dr. Bruce Perry talks about are these moments of connection called resiliency touch points. And resiliency touch points can be from 30 seconds to 5 minutes, and they are brief, intentional minutes which are shared with students by caring adults. And these intentional minutes can actually lower feelings of despair and hopelessness, and they can actually begin to heal wounds of trauma. So I've been doing this activity for at least 15 years, at least, and yet now I see it in a different light. Not just for oral language development, but for social and emotional development as well. And we do these touch points by, listening to children, asking questions of children, and observing and noticing and mentioning what we notice about children. So those would be the rules for the 30-second conversation. And so what I want you to think about is to think about how choosing children in your class or helping teachers, because I know many of you may not be in the classroom, but helping teachers choose children who have weak language skills or have more social emotional needs than others, and take 30 seconds every day to engage them in conversation. But before I want you to do that, I want you to think about what it feels like to experience 30 seconds of conversation. So I'm going to time 30 seconds. And as I told the class, my social emotional class this morning, you could be walking down the hall to the lunchroom and say, Pedro, you were out yesterday. Were you sick? And he said, yes, but I'm better today. And that takes 2 seconds. but I want you to feel what 30 seconds feels like when you're quiet and just in your bones. So I'm going to start. I just want you to be quiet, be still with yourself, and experience 30 seconds, because that's all the time I'm asking you to talk to a child. Okay. Okay, that's 30 seconds. We typically are talking, we are giving directions, we're reading, we're answering questions, we're asking questions, but we're seldom talking back and forth for 30 seconds. So if you had 6 children out of your 24 who really needed some extra attention in this way, it would only take you 3 minutes a day to give it to them, to go up to them and touch a shoulder and just engage for 30 seconds. So I love that activity, and teachers have told me that it's really a powerful one. Heroic conversations is another activity. I think language should be about meaningful things. So I just want to share a couple more activities and then we'll be done. But academic teacher talk, it's not just about talk in the home. What is the teacher doing? What is the content of the talk? What is the level of the talk? What do you think about teacher talk? Do you believe that it could be a missing link and an inexpensive and an effective way to enhance student literacy? I think it is. So here's an example of a heroic conversation. You're stimulating and expecting collaborative conversations, but about important ideas. I love to use quotes of famous people. There are so many wonderful children's books now that are biographies of inspiring people. And I think I have one that I would have shown you if we were home called Desmond and the Very Mean Word, about Desmond Tutu and the Very Mean Word. So here, this is quote, "I alone cannot change the world, but I can cast a stone across the waters to create many ripples." And then you just have kids talk about that, So you have your favorite heroes, and look for heroic quotes, short, easy quotes, but quotes. This works in high school as well as it works in kindergarten. I was in a teacher's room who was using this, and she had posters that you get online of famous people and quotes from that person. And you can go so far beyond just showing the quotes, but actually having kids talk about them. And ultimately, what I would want to do is have them write about them. So what I'd love for you to do is, if we can, Sherry, we have a few minutes left. I'd love to take 5 minutes and go into breakout rooms and just talk about which of these activities, Waves of Words, the Fair Trade Book Fair, Random Words of Kindness, the Backpack Notes, Super 7 Sentences, $10 Words, the 30-second conversation, Heroic Conversations, which ones might you realistically be able to use in next year to enhance your practice? Or if you're a coach, share with teachers. If you're an administrator, share with your teachers. So, and whenever you're ready, Sherry, if we could do this for 5 minutes, I think, and I guess we have to stop the recording for 5 minutes, Kim, perhaps. Okay.
All right, I'm ready to open.
Okay, think about worthy words first. Sometimes if you look at the words that are chosen in a core reading program, they may not be all the words that you think are the most important words. We say it takes about 12 repetitions for a student to really own a word, meaningful repetitions, using it actually. So think about worthy words. We want them to use good words. Use an interactive vocabulary routine, a routine in which they're thinking about what the word looks like, what the meaning of the word is. Here's my big warning. For years, I would say, who can tell me what this word means? And hands go up. And, the first person gets it wrong. The second person gets it wrong. The third person was listening to the second person. Just tell children what the word means and then have them repeat it, like those repeated sentences that we talked about. Have them repeat it, have them look at the word, have them know, you could figure out how many phonemes are in the word, how many syllables are in the word. I love to do a gesture with the word, whatever the word is. If the word is cooperate, hold hands. The gesture is holding hands. We use a Freyer model where we divide it in 4 and we make a picture. We could make a picture, but you can only make a picture once. But once I've taught the word cooperate means to work together, to help each other. And we use a gesture. And as we use a gesture, we say cooperate means to work together and help each other. And then 5 weeks later, all I have to do is do this. And my kids remember, oh, it's cooperate. We help each other. So the gesture, you only do a picture once, but you can take a gesture with you and do it over and over and over again. Teaching words in relationship to other words. I wish we had twice as much time, because if we did, I talked to you more about this, but we know that we learn words best in relationship to other words. So remember that, because that's important. I once heard Jane Fell Green give this analogy, and it changed my life forever. And she said, we all have silverware drawers in our home. And if we want to pull a fork out of a silverware drawer, we open it up, we pull it out. It's very easy. Some of us, myself included, have junk drawers in our house. And if you have a junk drawer and you open it up and you want to pull something out, it might get tangled on something else. And you might not even be able to get the drawer open, right? So what she was talking about is the way we store words supports the way we retrieve words. So when we store words in relationship to each other in like little file folders, it makes it easier for us to pull them out. There's a lot to say about that, but I hope that image of a silverware drawer, sometimes we dump in 10 words with this story, then we dump in 10 words with the next story, and 10 new words with the next story, but we want to make sure that we're linking words. Talking about the etymology and morphology of a word is great, and creating text sets so that children encounter those words in different situations. All of those are very helpful for enhanced vocabulary. And here I'm just, I have some that you can look at, but I have some activities, some slides that support what I was just talking to you about. And branching out is an activity, which is also, it's another one that's in my book that you can see, but the idea that you can use branching out for the root port and for morphology work. And on each branch of the tree of there's a graphic organizer of a tree, you can put transport, import, export, report, etc. But you can also use it for big ideas like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights for older students. And what goes on the different branches? Well, things like dignity, discrimination, inalienable, commission, fundamental. So these are things that could be used at the kindergarten level, but at much higher levels as well. And we talked about the interactive vocabulary routine. Semantic mapping, I love the idea of finding multiple meanings, of knowledge webs, of semantic webs. And I'll show you an example. So this is a fun, and you don't have to do it. You could do it on paper, but this is a fun thing to do in a class where you have yarn and you show the connections of bats to mammals, echolocation, insectivores. It's a plural noun. They live in caves, etc. So again, the idea of mapping everything we know about it and pulling it together, it really supports the way the brain learns words best. So creating a spider web of knowledge using a ball of yarn. And again, etymology, suffixes or meanings, a person who does something. So this is, if you're teaching, I was writing a lesson plan about this for a little supplemental reading series I'm working on. And if you're teaching, the suffix or means a person who does something, so that you can semantically map it with actor, painter, creator, baker, etc. And you can give cards to kids and have them stand in a circle, or you can do it with a worksheet page. And then something as simple as fly swatter morphemes. But the idea that you'd have two teams and you'd want to make sure the kids know that pre means before and re means again and port means to carry, etc. And then you play a game of swatting. You say, okay, the first team that could swat the prefix that means under, and the children would swat sub. You might start with just 4. You don't need to do 12 or 16 as I did. And then creating text sets. This one is about friendship, right? Owen and Mizé, Amos and Boris, just my friend and me. Todd and Frog and Toad are friends. Having fiction and nonfiction. Less effective instruction, and is this. You know this instruction. Does anybody know what blank blank means? Copying the word several times, looking it up in a typical dictionary, copying words from a dictionary or glossary, activities that do not require deep processing of the word, like word searchers or crossword puzzles, rote memorization, asking students to use context clues to guess the meanings of the word. Those are things that we have been taught to do as teachers. Believe me, I think I did every one of these, at one point in my career, but they are less effective instruction. So I want to end with this. Words can heal, and words can change a life. And this is me and Evelina in Peru. I was showing her in our social emotional class as well. But I think that you have words inside of you that can heal the children in your classroom. So, I love having you in my class. I'm so glad you came to school today. I love seeing your smiling face. What I'd love for you to do now is to put in the chat box, what are the words that you might use that could change a child's life? So if you would be so kind as to share in the chat box something that you already say, or something that you want to say. Great, you are enough. I love that. That is so powerful. I love learning with you. It's going so fast, I can't read them. I always tell I can't read them. I'm sorry. But thank you for all of that participation. Your words can heal. I'll end the session by saying this to you. Words can heal and words can wound. Make your words a balm to the souls of your students. What are the words that you might use that could change a child's life? Keep that in your mind. So thank you very much. This is my hero, Mother Teresa. Kind words can be short and easy to speak, but their echoes are endless. So thank you so much for being with me today, for coming to my session. This is a time that if anybody has questions, they might ask a question.
Yes, and I do have, thank you, Judy. I do have